Plyometric training presents a ton of physiological benefits for all populations. We're talking bone mineral density, increases in strength in our tendons and ligaments, maintenance of fast twitch muscle fibers, things that everyone could use. But like a lot of things in the gym, it comes at a cost. There's always a risk to reward ratio with training, and as we get into these more athletic, explosive styles of training, the risk does start to creep up. So we want to make sure that as we look at introducing clients to this style of training and progressing them along the way, that we've got a method to the madness. And so in this video, we're not only going to go through our 3 levels of progression, but also give you guys some very specific examples of each one to make sure you really understand what you're focused on. And before we dive in, I also think it's important that we just understand what plyometrics are. And even from the level that, hey, if you walk into the gym right now or tomorrow and you see somebody doing something, how do we know it's plyometric? Now, one giveaway for a lot of people is oftentimes we think plyometrics as we're leaving the ground, right? Let's say like a pogo hop, which is great. That's a great example. There's the rapid eccentric to concentric contraction. And that goal inside of plyometric training is minimizing what we call that amortization time, the time between the eccentric to concentric. But you'll see in the actual book as well, you'll also find the word reactive. There are instances where we get that eccentric to concentric where we may not be leaving the ground, like a kettlebell swing, for example. But it's the same concept. Our real goal in plyometric training over time is to try to minimize that amortization time, because if we minimize the amortization time, we get a stronger concentric contraction from our stretch shortening cycle and muscle spindles, hopefully concepts you guys feel comfortable with at this point in time. But as we think about that, that also means greater amounts of force, more force going through our tendons, ligaments, muscles. We want to make sure people aren't getting hurt in the process. So pay attention to these 3 levels of progression, not only to pass your NASM exam, but also to make sure you're doing the right things as you introduce some of these athletic training styles to your clients. Level 1 progression of plyometric training is all about learning to land. We need to train the body to absorb impact and forces, especially with things where we're leaving the ground. If you guys take a look at level 3 progressions of your balance training, it actually starts to blend in and look very similar to level 1 plyometrics. And that is a really important thing to pick up on, because that balance and that control of our body ends up blending into this prerequisite. And I'll give you guys a quick example. I have 3 and 4-year-old daughters. They have no problem launching their body into the air. And if you watch enough youth athletes, especially even males and females, as they start to spurt up in growth, you'll see they're great at jumping, but slow down and pay attention to how they land, and you'll see this Bambi-like cave into the knees. It's almost painful to watch once you see it, but that's the key. We want to make sure that as we're doing these things, if we focus on, in this phase, learning to really absorb impact and being very conscious about our mechanics as we're landing, then when we get to these higher levels, level 2 and level 3 progressions of plyometrics, we're doing multiple jumps in a row, the body becomes more automatic at getting us in those right positions so we don't get injured while we do it, and we also get the most out of our plyometric training. Level 2 of plyometrics is all about adding intensity to what we've already been building upon. Level 1 was about building that solid foundation with impact, with landing, making sure we can control our body as we get into those positions, and we start to introduce even some different directions and planes of motion. Now in level 2, now we start adding intensity. That might also mean amplitude or speed, right? Based on the movements that we're doing, the examples you'll see following are going to either be larger in size, bigger jumps, or potentially also faster, more rapid contractions. All things that make it harder for my body to stabilize and get back in those good positions. So if we do it right, hopefully we continue to build up our ability to move with explosivity and still get in good positions while we're doing plyometric training. Level 3 progression is what we call hitting the gas pedal. If we've done our job in levels 1 and 2, we've built a foundation, we've started to add a little bit more intensity and dynamic motion to our movements, and now in level 3, we start to get to some much more advanced training concepts. And you'll see from the exercises in here why we want to make sure we're building people up. Because if you start people out with exercises like depth drops, not only might they not be ready to control and absorb, but the reality of it is there's a lot of strengthening of our tendons and ligaments and even the neurological system that happens in those earlier phases. So phase 3, hitting the gas pedal, check out the exercises and put them to use. Hopefully seeing these 3 levels of progression brought to life gave you a little better visual of how to apply this type of progression for plyometrics when you get into the gym, and why it's so important that we do bring people along appropriately, because those level 3 progressions, as fun and as exciting as they are, it's a lot on the body. We want to make sure people not only get the most out of it, but also don't get injured in the process. So if you guys got something out of this video, don't forget, subscribe to the channel. We're committed to putting out great content for you guys on a regular basis as you go on this journey towards becoming a new coach and trainer. And if you haven't gotten your hands on our 7th edition NASM study guide, make sure to check out the link in the description below.